Good. And we're live. Awesome. All right. Welcome to tonight's show of Let's Talk About Ice, live from the Gold Coast and Byron Bay, guys. We're actually crossing over live. Byron Bay, we're going to Rianya, and we have a story for you. I'm super excited. We are getting, invites or emails from all around Australia and people wanting to share their story. The reason we're doing this, guys, is not just to air our dirty laundry out there, and we don't want to talk about all the horrible things that we got into and the things we've done and the people we've hurt, or it's nothing to be proud of, but it is to raise awareness and educate people about the dangers of the drug called ice. So please, if you are seeing this video, click share for us on your screen right now and share it in your social media, because you don't know who is suffering silently and who needs to hear this message today. Okay, we have people on here being interviewed, sharing their hearts in order to help others. So somebody might need to hear this story tonight and might reach out for help. So please, I ask you all, on all our followers on our Facebook, my personal friends, please share this post right now, because we are about to embark on a story that can be life-changing for some. Okay, and I mean, like, it from death to life. So click the share, please. Awesome. Before we get started, I just need to do a couple of shout outs. Thank you so much to Patrick from Coffex and Pastor Jim from Cross Life Church, who has donated the coffee cart for us, and we are embarking on our coffee experience extraordinaire. Neo Coffee is about to be birthed, guys. We have some amazing people running it, and we will be here at 204 Narang Street, Southport, sometime next week. Okay, so the op shop is open. Come down and check it out, but you'll be able to get some really good coffee, because they are coffee experts, and they will be making you a dream coffee full of love, and you'll be also helping Australian Anti-Ice campaign at the same time. And we are super, super excited because we're getting close to heading up to Townsville. So we've got over 2,000 kids that we're going to be educating up in Townsville. But we are establishing it. We have established a team up there. We're looking at establishing an op shop up there. If you are in Townsville and you want to get involved and you want to help, maybe you can do a day in the op shop, or maybe you can help fold some flyers, or maybe you can help make some calls in your community and let people know that we're there, and be there as a point of call for people reaching out for help. Every day we get so many calls of people reaching out for help, whether it's families that have a loved one entrapped in addiction, or somebody that's entrapped in addiction and they want to get out and they don't know how, and they need support. So that's what we do. We're about to pop in Townsville, where we have, and we are super, super excited to hit Townsville in a big way, in a good way, and integrate with the services there to be able to provide more support and buddying, and also education in the community. I also want to say a huge thank you to Snap in Southport, who've printed out our stickers that we're going to give out to the kids in schools. That says "Not Even Once." That's our message, and it has the 1-800-NO-TO-ICE number. 1-800-NO-TO-ICE is our national number. You can call us anywhere in Australia, and somebody will be online to help you through whatever you're going through when it comes to addiction and mental health. And you don't have to be the person in addiction. You might have a loved one in addiction. We're still there to help. We have peer family support people that are there. So thank you, Snap, for helping us with our stickers to hand out to the community. And thank you to the Rotary Clubs up in Townsville for supporting your local community. They have sponsored their local schools and community as well, and they've helped us get up there, because we're not a funded charity, and we can come in and help, yes, but because we're not funded, we need the local community support. And in saying that, if you want to help and you want to support the AARC Army, please go onto our website. It's www.australianantiicecampaign.org.au, and straight at the top it says there's a banner and it says join the AARC Army, and you can click on that and help make a difference. Okay, your signature for a petition on there, and also every $10 helps us get in front of another youth and educate them against the dangers of this horrific drug. And honestly, the feedback coming back from the schools and the teachers are phenomenal. We also do work in prisons, in workplaces. So if you have a workplace and you want to book a workshop, somebody like myself who's lived through that experience, and we have lots of information to share so that you can get a better understanding of what happens when somebody's addicted to ice. Also, we're still short 1 or 2 volunteers for our op shop on the Gold Coast. So we will be opening an op shop in Ipswich very, very soon. If you want to help, please reach out and contact us. Again, on our website, there's a little volunteer with us. Just let us know which area you're from. We have teams in Coffs Harbour, in Sydney, in WA, in Ipswich, in Townsville, and very, very soon in Beenleigh as well. So if you want to help and you want to get involved, we need to know about it. So get in touch with us. Or you can call us at the office on 075 665 6063 and we can connect you to the right area. All right, so without further ado, I'm super, super, super excited. And so I am really sitting on the edge of my seat, waiting to hear this amazing man, and who's, from his heart, wanting to share his story, not for glory, but to help others. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Corey.
Hello there, how are you? Hey there, how are you? Let's just start off and say ice is a putrid drug and it shouldn't be on the streets, especially around our kids or adults or anyone for that start.
We lost internet, but we're back. Corey, can you hear me?
Yep, I lost you there for a second.
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you, I just can't see you there.
Okay, am I live? Yeah. Okay. We've just lost a little bit of broadcast, guys, because we are crossing over to Coffs Harbour and Corey is online. We're just seeing what's happening here. It won't be too much longer. Thank you, Margot, for joining us. Valerie, awesome. Good to see you all online. Isaac. It's all right, Ree. You can come on the show. She's beautiful. One day she will be doing the show, hosting the show. Okay, do we have Corey again? Hello, Corey.
There we are.
Breaking up a little bit, hey? You've only got one bar. Are we tapped in? Awesome, but your screens are frozen, so I'm wondering whether you're frozen online.
Your screen keeps getting frozen, Andrea.
What internet are you tapped into there? Our internet. Do you want to try and tap into mine?
Yeah. I've lost Andrea again, but that's all right. We'll find her.
Okay, how's that streaming now? Corey?
Yep. I can.
Okay,
Your screen's
audio
black, but I
was
can hear you.
removed. Add yourself back again.
Yep. There
Are
you
you with
are.
me, Corey?
I am.
Nah, he's frozen. We've only got one bar. See? There, go to my okay.
I think I've lost Andrea again. I want to say why I've lost Andrea. Addiction is for life, people. No matter what. You know what I mean? You've always got to go through it and just keep going through the hurdles. No matter what, you will get through it if you're strong enough and you have people around you who are strong enough to support you. You will get through this life.
I think we're back. I think we're back.
Okay, you're back, yep.
Yes, good, well done. Holding the fort there, brother. We've had some internet issues. I don't know what happened, guys. We never had this problem. So thank you for holding the fort, Corey. Awesome.
Anytime.
We know how to land, eh? Sometimes when we've been through our kind of journey, nothing phases us anymore, eh?
Well, that's exactly right. And look, it's not how you fall down, it's how you get back up. And as long as you keep getting back up.
That's right, mate. Good word for the people out there. I don't know if you're listening and you might be somebody that's in early recovery. You know, we get a lot of people, sometimes they're relapsing all the time and they're like, I'm never going to get this. I'm like, yes, you are. Relapse is part of recovery, you know.
That's exactly right. You know, that's what I was just saying before when you went off air there. I said, look, addiction's for life. You know what I mean? Yeah. Addiction's one of them things that we will battle through, and as long as we're strong and we have strong people around us, we'll get through it.
Yeah, it's all about putting the right framework around us so that, you know, we can use and channel that addiction into a positive way or into a negative path.
100%, yeah.
Corey, I am super excited to meet you when you can come up to the Gold Coast, because I believe I got an email from you, you know, saying that you know, your heart was really to help others get out of that bad space. How long have you been clean now, mate?
Look, I've been clean roughly off the ice and everything else for around 9 months since I got out of jail, or well, roughly to about 2 years, honestly. You know, 2.5 years now. You know what I mean? I did use the first little bit when I was in jail, you know, drugs that were available in jail.
Yep.
But yes, you know, since then I've been clean.
Well done, mate. Congratulations. Being able to continue your journey, you know, and we often talk to people saying it's not about the not using, the abstinence of using drugs. Abstaining from it is not recovery, but when you work through it, through the issues, the underlying issues along the way, we can actually unpack all the stuff that, you know, kept people trapped in that world, yeah?
100%, yeah.
Full recovery, you know. Tell me a bit about, like, like, did you, after you came out of prison, did you, like, what happened in there? What changed for you so that you got clean?
Look, to be honest, I started my drug and alcohol counselling, or my Cert 3 in community service, about 4 to 5 years ago. When I went to a rehab, I went to a rehab and spent 11 months in a rehab. I
Yeah.
graduated after 7 months and stayed on for an extra 4 months as a graduate volunteer. And I started my studies then. And then when I got out of the rehab, I slipped back into addiction. Even after 11 months, you know what I mean? I just hung out with the wrong people, the wrong crowd, wrong places. There's
Mm.
things that they teach you: safe people, safe places.
So
And
how long were you clean for, Corey? Tell me, how long were you clean for before you relapsed like that?
look, I was clean for roughly about 2 months once I got out of rehab and that. And I was isolated a lot. I didn't know no one on the Gold Coast. I was very isolated. And then I started hanging out with people again from the rehab that I knew that, had slipped back into addiction. And it started back off with weed again. It started me smoking weed again. And then within a matter of a couple of weeks, I was back on the ice. It didn't take very long at all.
And you know what, Corey? A lot of people say to us, "Oh, now just it's just a bit of weed, it's just a bit of alcohol, it's just a bit of this." And tell me your thoughts now after going through that. What are your thoughts about gateway drugs, like and using other substances as an addict? Like, and I'm talking for me too, because a lot of people think that it might be okay. What are your thoughts on that?
Look, to be honest, one thing leads to another. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? Like when I was when I was 10, 12 years ago, when I was a heavy drinker, I'd get
yeah,
the more drunk I got, I started using ice. You know what I mean? So that I could actually drink more. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And same with weed. You know what I mean? Sometimes I'd wake up and I'd smoke weed and that, and I'd be too stoned on the couch. So I started using ice and speed and other drugs. You know what I mean? So I'd
yeah,
actually be motivated for the day more than I was. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And it was the weed. The weed would put me into that predicament. You know what I mean? Of sitting on the couch and doing nothing. You know what I mean? So look, they all, like, I never believed it when I was younger. And everyone used to sit there and say, look, you just smoke weed, smoke weed. You know what I mean? But eventually, look, one thing does lead to another. Not on all people. I have mates that, over the years and that have just smoked weed, have never touched ice, never touched other drugs. You know what I
yeah.
mean? But look, a majority of people, yeah, weed and alcohol, one thing slips to another and leads up. You know what I mean? Like, or you could go out and have a drink. You know what I mean? And next thing you're having an MD cap, or you're doing this, or you're doing that. So, look, yeah,
And
it can be.
they're all roads to hell. You know what I mean? Like, everything has a consequence in life, right? So
Yeah,
you look for stuff that give you a positive consequence. Honestly, you get 5 minutes of pleasure for the damage down the road. Like, this drug got you. Your lifestyle on drugs got you into prison, mate. Like,
it did, yeah.
how did that happen? Like,
Look, to be honest, I started smoking. Look, I tried ice when I was 11. It was the first time, just before I was 12. I was with a mate. His mum was on it. And this is well years before it actually hit the streets.
yeah,
And we used to steal it off his mother. You know what I mean? We used to steal it off his mother. And it wasn't a daily thing at that time. It was just, once a blue moon. Yeah, we would steal it off his mother and would try it. And then, by the time I was 13, 14, I had a full blown, speed addiction and another addiction, like weed addiction. I was drinking alcohol heavily.
yeah,
And I lived with my mum and dad. My mum and dad are great people. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Best parents you could ever have. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And I hid everything from my parents. You know what I mean? I had four wonderful brothers. And I hid my addiction from a lot of them too. You know what I mean?
yeah.
But yeah, and then over the years and that, it just, I started dealing to support my habit. And then it just, to be honest, it just snowballed.
Yeah, it does. It does. I want to go back, and I want to go back because I see like a charming, beautiful young man in front of me, and I'm just like, "You what? You went to prison and smoking ice since you were 11?" I'm just like, "What were you thinking?" I want to go back to capture a little bit about what was going on for you in here. Yeah, what was going on with around your family life and your circumstances? Because most people think, Corey, that it's only the kids with all the problems, it's only the kids that have really bad families, or that have issues in with their community and stuff like that. They're the kids that go to drugs. Was that Tell me about how it started. Tell me about your family
No,
life.
look, my family life, I had the most perfect family you could ever imagine. I had my mum and dad. My dad worked 2 or 3 jobs to support us boys and mum. I mean, I've got 4 brothers and that. My mum is the most absolute saint of a woman that you could ever meet. You could ever meet. Like, I had a perfect upbringing, I mean, in that sort of sense of family life. I
And
had my father, what was that, sorry?
you have brothers and sisters?
I had 4 brothers.
Yep.
I had a younger brother and 3 older brothers. And look, mum and dad done everything that they could ever do to support us in schooling, sports, everything like that. Look, to be honest, I was one of the most popular kids growing up at school and stuff like that.
Yep.
And so it wasn't like I was picked on at school. It wasn't like I had, them sort of dramas and that. It wasn't like I was trying to be cool at school because no one knew for years about my drug habit. To be honest, at the time and that, I smoked it once, to be honest, when I was 11, just before I was 12. Like I said, within a couple of years and that, it had just built into an addiction and that. I'd left school by 14. I was working full time, working with 40-year-old blokes, and none of them smoked it. None of them, some of them smoked weed and drank alcohol and that. And so, look, I had a perfect upbringing in that sense of life.
What were you
Um,
doing for work? Tell me, slow down. What were you doing for work? At 14, you were working.
Look, my father turned around and told me that if I left school, he'd get
Yeah,
me a job. The day I left school, it was 2 days later, my father walked in and said, "Pack your stuff, you're going to work tomorrow as a bricklaying labourer." And
yeah,
with one of his mates. And look, he got me. I started working for the bloke,
yeah,
and that was it. And I done 3.5 years of labouring and an apprenticeship, bricklaying and stuff. And like there were days I started drinking and that with the boys and that, and it turned from, I remember having 1 or 2 beers, and then realizing that I felt a bit drunk, and they were laughing at me and giving me shit. So within a couple of weeks of working for these blokes, I was taking speed or ice or whatever it was so I could keep up with them, in working and drinking in the afternoon and stuff. And,
yeah.
so I felt like one of the men, even though they weren't using the drugs themselves. But that was me.
And they didn't know that, like, they didn't know that you were using?
No, look, one of my bosses at the time knew I smoked weed.
Yeah,
He smoked weed himself and that, and he'd sit there and tell me, "Go up to the Ute and have a bong and that." If and he could see that I was struggling with work, and I'd be up there while he's thinking I was having a bong, and I was up there taking speed or using
yeah,
ice or something like that.
yeah, yeah.
I hid it from a lot of people for years and years.
Were you using it, like, at this point, when did you start using every day? Like, when did
Look,
you start?
by about 14, I had 14, just before I was 15, I had an everyday addiction.
Wow. Wow. And people around you were hiding it all that time. Like, people around you didn't know that this
No,
was going
yeah. I would hide it that well that no one ever knew. You know what I mean?
on.
Like, some nights I would sit there and, I'd smoke weed in the morning before I went to work, and I'd be on speed or ice through the day, and I'd come home and smoke weed in the afternoon. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I'd put myself to sleep by smoking numerous amounts of weed.
Yeah,
No one ever knew because I was never up 24/7 or anything like that.
yeah,
But yeah, I was using probably half of my pay back then at 14, 15, what I mean, on, speed and ice and stuff. And,
wow,
my mum and dad used to always say to me, "Why aren't you saving any money?" You know what I mean? Like, and, I'd make up all sorts of excuses, you know what I mean? My parents, I remember earning $1,000 a week at 15, and my
Mm.
mum and dad, I'd still hit them up for money. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, and they would never say anything. They would never judge me. You know what I mean? Like they thought, I must have been, shouting alcohol or whatever it was to my mates, and just blowing it on silly things and stuff. You know what I mean? But a lot of times it went to my addiction.
Yeah, yeah, wow. And addict, we are really good at hiding these things, and because it's not something that you just want to get rid of or out of your life. And if people know, especially the people close to you, that'll mean that they're going to try and stop you or make you wrong or make you bad for doing that. So we kind of try and conceal it until we can't. Tell me about when that started to when it actually started you started to lose control of that, Corey.
Look, to be honest, I started losing control, pretty much straight away. But I held it together in a way to a point that to others it didn't look like I was losing control or anything like that. But to myself, I was losing control. Within a couple of months of using it every day and stuff. And what I mean, like I think it was by the time I was about 17 or something like that, I didn't have a cent in my bank account where I'd earn, over 100, probably nearly $100,000. You know what I mean?
Wow.
I was earning $900 a week, in most weeks. Some weeks $1,100 if I worked a Saturday. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So you'd think, over a 3 year period, 3.5 year period, I should have earned 100 odd grand, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I didn't have a cent in my bank account, you know what I mean? So to me, I started losing it. When I look back at it and that at the time, you don't
Mm.
think that you're losing control. You don't
Yeah.
think that, you're doing this because, oh, look, you've got a roof over your head or you've got, this and that. But where's the
Mm.
rest of your money going to? You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Tell me about like your lifestyle in terms of like you went to work and then what did you isolate? What was going on? Did you have friends? Were your friends doing it with you or
Yeah, look, I never isolated. I've always been a very, sociable person.
yeah.
As soon as I finished work, I'd ride down to my mate's house and would sit there and drink. He was about 16 at the time when I was, 15, 16 together. Would sit there and drink numerous amounts of alcohol, and I'd sit there and, he'd ask me to not smoke, ice or anything in front of him or his mates, because
Yeah.
he wasn't into it at the time.
Yeah.
And so I'd duck into the bathroom every half an hour and sit there and smoke ice and come back out and would sit there and smoke bongs and drink alcohol. You know what I mean? From 4:30 in the afternoon till I'd ride home. He was
Wow.
doesn't he was half a dozen blocks from mine, and I'd ride home every night at 10, 11 o'clock at night. I'd be in bed by about midnight, 1 o'clock. You know what I mean? Because of the amount of alcohol and other weed I'd smoked as well. And then
Yeah.
I'd go to work and I'd do it all over again.
Man, Corey, I've got to ask because I know people at home might be thinking, how did you sustain this? How, like, because the body's got to, have an effect. Like, how did you sustain it, and how long did this go on for?
Look, I was weighing at the time roughly, 50 kilos, 55 kilos for all them years. You know what I mean? I was, I'm only 5'8", so I'm not the tallest person, but I was stick thin my whole life.
That's
And
really,
I used to tell people it was my metabolism, that
yeah,
I worked too hard or anything like that. And it was just, I found every single possible way I could hide it from people, and I did. You know what I mean? I'd buy off my people I bought it off were, 10, 20 years older than me. So they weren't in the same group of friends or circle or anything like that.
yeah,
I made sure that no one really knew them or knew me. But because when I was a bricklayer too, I worked with a lot of older gentlemen and stuff like that. So look, to be honest, I'm amazed at how I hid it from everyone for so
yeah.
many years myself.
Yeah, because I remember like when I was on the gear, it got to a point where I was getting lost around the corner from my house. I started losing control. So did you have stuff like psychosis and like did you start to get into depression at all? Because that's like
Look,
runs hand
look
in
to,
hand. I
it,
said
it,
it.
it, it does. Look, to be honest, I've never suffered personally from psychosis, even known I don't know how, honestly. I don't know if I was one
Yeah.
of the lucky ones. Depression was a big thing. Like I was depressed and that for many, many years.
Yeah.
Psychosis and all that sort of stuff. Look, I've seen some of my mates that have used it for a couple of months and, and they've never been the same.
Yeah.
Where I used it for years and years, I got very angry, which is part of psychosis.
Yeah.
I'd be down the street or I'd be drinking at a party, and I'd see someone look at me, and straight away I was over there fighting them or starting a
Yeah.
fight with them or something like that. You know what I mean? So, look, I never got psychosis in the way of hearing voices or getting lost or anything like that, but thinking people were, say, making fun of me or something like that when they might have
Okay.
looked at me for 2 seconds at a party. You know what I mean? And I'm losing my stuff at them, and going off at them and stuff like that. So, look, I did get psychosis in that sense of thing.
Yeah.
But psychosis, as you know yourself and a lot of other people know, it can be a numerous amount of things.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's like the paranoia, guys, is all part of that psychosis bubble. I don't know one person that's been involved in Ice World that hasn't had paranoia, and the serotonin's depleted from the brain is a chemical that stabilizes your anger, your violence, your aggression. Yeah, so when ice depletes that, the person using it is angry and violent, and coupled with that paranoia and or psychosis, you're a time bomb waiting to happen. And I've seen people kill people, under that paranoia psychosis.
You've just dropped out of there, Andrea. I've lost you, Andrea. Yeah, back. I lost
Am
you there
I
for a bit.
alive?
Yep, I can hear you now again. Can you hear me, Andrea?
I don't know if I'm live. We've lost Corey for a minute, so
I can
he's
see
there,
you there.
and I'm not.
You're not. Why is their internet slow?
I don't know. There's something wrong with this. We should be plugged into this one. This is the main one. We dropped out, Corey. Sorry.
No, that's all right. Oh, we've lost Andrea again, people. Either that or she's lost me.
I don't know what's happening with this internet, I tell you what.
That's
Stop
all
it
right. You're back there.
now. Awesome. So what did I miss?
That's all
What did I
right. I waited for you.
Oh, thank goodness. Okay, good. So you all that the anger, it's the serotonin depletion and the paranoia is all part of what we call it's a hamburger with a lot. If you
Hmm.
want to embark in ice addiction, it comes with that. And you're right. I know people that have had psychosis and they got stuck in psychosis after a very short time, and they've never come out. They're
Yep.
stuck like this place where they're like scared of everything and everyone. It's so horrible. You're so
I've
lucky.
I've had the same, Andrea. I've had mates that have tried it for short terms of, short periods of time, and to this day they're still lost. Do you know what I mean? They're still. Some of them are too scared to leave their own houses.
Yeah,
They sit in their bedrooms all day. Other people, have been in and out of rehabs, and
yeah,
and I've got one mate, that I try to help all the time, and that he's actually up the coast, and he messaged me all the time, and his words are he was born to be an addict. And I try to tell him no. And he's like, man, I live for this. And I'm like, no, you don't, man. There's other stuff better out there.
you're
And
actually dying for this. That's what you got to tell him. You're dying for this. Like it's killing
yeah,
him.
Andrea, I've lost that many mates. I had to stop counting,
Wow.
due to addiction. You know what
Wow.
I mean?
What a
you
blessing
know,
you've been given, though, to be able to come out again.
look, yeah. And, like, look, I plan on, like, my son, and I've got three boys and that. I've got an 11-year-old that lives with me full time now. And
Wow.
his words to me are that he's just that proud of me. It's not funny.
Yeah.
Now, and that means the world to me. And it's not the only, that's the majority of it that has kept me strong too. Is knowing that I have got safe people and around me, like my family. My family all support me. Now after getting out of jail and stuff, where look, my family have always supported me, but
Yeah.
now that I'm clean and doing the right thing. I know my family, I know that they're there for me and they're strong, and I know I'm not going to slip back into addiction or anything like that now, Like,
You've got
but for years,
to Corey, because you're worth it, mate. You're worth having a life worth living, having relationships with your kids, and having an awesome life. And we've just got to make sure that we have the right framework around us, that to help us not fall back, not fall sideways. Like if somebody's born with a limp and they need to wear a crutch forever, so be it. But they can still walk and they can still get places. They just got to put the right crutch on,
that's it. That's exactly right. A big majority of it, I believe, Andrea, is when people do slip back into addiction, is when they're hanging out with the same people.
Yeah.
And they stop and they stay at home for a couple of weeks or whatever, and they get clean and this and that. But then
Yeah.
they're back down to the same place, hanging with the same people, smoking ice again or taking drugs again. And, that was a big thing I had to do when I got out of jail was cut all my ties, like cut it, like I got back out of jail, and as soon as I got back into the streets of Surfers Paradise, I had numerous amounts of people approach me, and say, let's hang out, let's do this, let's do that. And I had to make the decision of going no, and I applied for parole. I was out on 3 years parole, and I
Yeah.
applied for parole to come down to New South Wales because I knew I'd be safe around my family. I'd be safe around my kids, So,
Good choice.
to be yeah, safe people, safe places there once again, I knew if I stayed around Surfers Paradise, I would have slipped back into addiction. I would have slipped back into dealing.
Yeah.
And to me, my addiction and dealing come hand in hand to me,
Wow.
with my addiction and that, because I was, I never, I was never out there stealing stuff to support my addiction, and I was doing this and doing that. But
Yeah.
yeah, I was dealing the whole time to support my addiction.
That's right.
Um,
And people don't understand that, Corey, because we get people on our Facebook and they say, oh, there might be a post about somebody, who's an addict and been caught dealing, and they go, lock him up for life. And I'm like, mate, that's somebody's kid, that's somebody's brother, that's somebody like you and like me, and
Yeah.
that actually need help to be able to learn how to put that framework around them, because they're in addiction themselves. That's why they're trying to, deal it to sustain their own habit, mate. It's like it's a vicious cycle. It's not, it doesn't make you who you are. Calm down, like in terms of like wanting to kill somebody because they've been dealing, like they are in that cycle.
Yeah,
So,
I copped a lot of it, Andrew, when I got out of jail. You know what I mean? Like, God, you're a piece of shit. You're this and that, and it was funny because a lot of the people that actually tried to give me a hard time over the years, I'd actually sold them drugs. You know what
yeah,
I mean? So, and they're sitting there going, I was the worst of the worst. Yeah. Look, I was dealing drugs. It isn't the best thing. You know what I mean? I understand that. And I totally admit that, what I was doing was wrong. You know
yeah.
what I mean?
You
But
paid
yeah,
the time for it,
what's that?
and you paid the time for it.
I,
You've
I
gone and
did.
paid time for your crime, so that everybody deserves a second chance, to live life clean, and to do, to have another chance at it. Like, who are they to judge? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, one of the best things I ever learned, and it was actually at rehab when I was at rehab, was look, nobody can go back and start again, but anybody can start today,
Yeah,
and make a new future for themselves. And
yeah,
it's true. We all make mistakes. No one's perfect. You know what I mean? There's I can't honestly name one person in my whole life, probably
yeah.
other than my mother, but who is just perfect. But you know what I mean? Like, everyone has made decisions, you know what I mean? And, yeah, a lot of decisions have been bad and this and that. And yeah, a lot, I can admit, I own what I done, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? I went to maximum security, and done a couple of years of maximum security around murders, around, rapists and everything like that for dealing to support my habit. You know what I mean?
Right.
I never went to a minimum security or anything like that. So, yeah, I'd done my time and I'd done my time tough, you know what I mean? Like,
Wow.
so
What a price to pay for, having a good time on drugs. Just saying. So I want to go back, to so you on this roller coaster of working and drinking and doing drugs, and at 16, and I want to hear about how this escalated, Corey, because did your family find out like that things weren't right with you? Did your friends question,
look, I started being more open with it around my friends by about 17-ish, 18,
Yeah.
when ice actually properly hit the streets. So
Mhm.
I was using it for years before ice actually properly hit the streets.
Yeah.
And yeah, look, as the more people that actually used it, the more I was like, well, look, so do I. You know what I mean? Like, and they
Yeah.
all sort of had a feeling I was, and
Yeah.
my parents and my family and those close around me, they copped the brunt of my addiction, you know what I mean? So, every time I came down or every time anything, I would blow up at my family. I'd blow up at my family, my friends and family, you know what I mean? And, a lot of them blamed it on my drinking at the time. Oh,
Yeah.
it was never my drinking, you know what I mean? Like, my drinking, don't get me wrong, wasn't the best, you know what I mean? But I always let them think it was my drinking, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? But yeah, it sort of escalated in that, and it wasn't until I was a bit older, that I was around 21 onwards, that sort of my mum and father and all that knew that I was actually smoking ice heavily, because I admitted it to them back then.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was my friends by that time. I was living in Ballina. I was one of the biggest dealers in Ballina. You know what I mean?
Mm.
I was supplying, most people around the Ballina region and everything with their drugs,
Yeah.
which, I'm not proud of. And, I'd done it, and people go, oh, you made a lot of money. I didn't, because I also had a gambling addiction. You know what I
Wow.
mean? And my ice made my gambling addiction, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So look, I only ever dealt really to support my habit at the start.
I hear you.
Um,
Addiction's addiction, and whether it's, most addicts will have gambling, sex addiction, porn, all other types of addiction, but that can be channeled into a positive way. I believe I still have addictions. I still like, I I eat too much chewing gum all day, every day. So that's one of my addictions. I'm addicted to what I do here at ARC.
Yeah.
I've made this like my life. I'm addicted to seeing people come back to life. Helping them create that pathway and walking with them, because I remember being there. I remember
Yeah.
being at the end of myself and going, hey, I don't know how to change this, but I want to, and that's having to go to the extreme that you went to and you went to jail, like, and for stuff that that you were trying to sustain your habit, and you lost control. Tell me how that happened. And I have a question before you go there. Did your parents try and intervene? Like, they try
Of
and help?
course. Of course, my parents tried to sit down and they would talk to me time and time again, but I didn't listen. You know what I mean? My own brothers tried to talk to me, and I just didn't want to listen. It was going in one ear and out the other for numerous amounts of years. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? It wasn't until I went to rehab when I was around 25, or 24-ish sort of thing. I think I was 25 that, and that my family actually realized that, they started learning a bit about the rehab and, about sort of the, addiction in themselves. And,
mm,
they started, learning that, that addiction wasn't the best thing, what I mean? Like, and that it's not just something that you can say, look, I want you to stop using, and the person's going to stop the next day.
yeah.
I mean, it was, yeah. So my parents, look, even over my alcohol addiction, my weed addiction, my parents and my family always tried to intervene.
That's all.
And it was me that didn't want to hear it, Andrea.
Yeah, but education, in on your parents' behalf, like, they got themselves educated to be able to try and help your condition, and that is so super important, Corey, because
It
there
is.
education out there. We work, we have peer support counselors that have lived that have had loved ones in prison. We work closely with family drug support, and they have like groups and they have tools to be able to learn. We have a program on our website called Family Brief that families can download, and they can learn about the tools and the cycle of addiction and contemplation stage, and what's enabling and what's boundaries, and how does that look for somebody that's using and trapped in that world, and how can I help my loved one. So
Yeah.
it's knowledge, is so important for the families to get, so that when their addict is ready for change, they will be able to know how to help. Yeah.
That's exactly right. A lot of my mates, family members or anything over the years that have been stuck in addiction, what I mean? Like, the people around them didn't know nothing about addiction. They didn't
Yes.
have that knowledge to help the people. They would
Yeah.
literally just say to that person, look, we need you to stop, or we want you to stop, or we're going to cut you off, or, and then that person couldn't stop because they didn't have that support around them. So
Yes. That's,
their families would cut them off, which
yeah.
led them into bigger addictions.
Yeah. That's not the answer. And the answer is to, I love you. I don't love what you're doing. And while you're doing that, I can't enable you by giving you money and continue to, catch you when you hurt. But I still love you, and I want to help you get out of that space. Your parents know who you are. They know your heart. They know the person that we see in front of us today. So they would have been, how can I get the knowledge and the tools to be able to help my son to break that and to help him, step out of that cycle.
Yeah.
Tell me what happened then, Corey. What followed for you in terms? So you're using. You went to rehab. You came out. You relapsed. How did you end up in jail, mate?
Look, to be honest, I met someone, I was in rehab, I left, I started using. The person I was using with, it was a clean house. It was a no drug alcohol house. She was an alcoholic, and I was a drug addict, you know what I mean? She slipped back into rehab, and went to detox. And by the time she'd come out of detox, I'd isolated myself to the point that I started hanging out with people, and I got a message one day, of a bag of ice that I'd left on the kitchen bench, And she turned around and said, look, you moved out, you kicked out, I want you gone by the end of the day. And look, I ended up on the streets for a couple of days, and I didn't know a soul in, the Gold Coast. And then I met someone, and an older lady friend, and she turned around and she was dealing at the time. She gave me a place to stay, and one thing led to another, and I just slipped back into full blown addiction. And because I could talk to people and I was very sociable.
Yeah.
Within a couple of months, 6 months, I had a very big client base around Surfers Paradise, Southport area. And for probably 4 years or 3.5, 4 years, I started dealing numerous amounts of drugs. I mean, I went to jail. Originally, they charged me with 3 counts of commercial drug trafficking in and
Right.
around the Gold Coast. You know what I mean? Because they said that I was supplying a majority of the Gold Coast with amphetamines and this and that over a 3 to 4 year period. You know what I mean? And they claim that, to be honest, they claim that I'd dealt millions and millions of dollars worth of drugs. You know what I mean? I can't honestly say how much I earned. I never sat there and counted it. You know what I mean? I never sat there and counted how much I dealt. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? But yeah, I ended up getting charged with 3 counts of commercial drug supply. Drug trafficking, I should say. And ended up, they charged me and my partner at the time, and we're both looking at 8 years to life.
Wow.
And yeah, and I turned around and I said, look, well, if I'll plead guilty to 1 count of street level trafficking, because they had 2 text messages. They knew who I was. I was under investigation for a year and a half. I knew I was under that big of an investigation that I'd walk out of my hotel, go by Cuppers, and walk down the street and knock on the windows of these detectives that were watching my place and off from Cuppers being being smart. You know what I mean? And it got to the point that I had a lot of people working for me. I had people that were drivers, people that were, my runners, people that were, my bodyguards. And it got to the point that, it was my drug trafficking and my, doing what I was doing just honestly got that out of hand. And look, I walked around. People might think that ice addicts sit there and walk around and beg on the streets and do this. I walked around in a suit for 3.5 years.
Wow.
Every single day, I'd iron my shirt, I'd steam clean my suit. You know what I mean? And I'd have me little earphone and me little earbuds in. I'd be on a tablet, walking up and down Cavill Ave on a tablet. You know what I mean? Organising drug deals. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Everyone thought I was a businessman. You know what I mean? And I did myself at the time. I used to classify myself as a businessman. I never classified myself before I went to jail as a drug dealer or anything like that. I always used to say I was a businessman. So for a lot of people that think, oh yeah, ice addicts, this and that. Like my house, my units that I used to furnish, I used to have statues, of big angels and that in the corners, and like goddesses, big statues of goddesses in the corners and stuff. And my place looked like it was a multi-millionaire's place of, what I mean, like, and a lot of people would come see me and go, aren't you an ice dealer, or aren't you to this and that? And I would say to them, no, I'm a businessman. You know what I mean? So for a lot of people that sit there and think, a lot of, ice heads and ice addicts and this and that live in drug dens and they live in there. An ice addict can be anyone. You know what I
That's
mean? I dealt to lawyers. I dealt to doctors. I dealt to some very influential people, around Australia. You know what I
right.
mean? And, so not everyone I dealt to was, your average ice addict. Everyone was an ice addict, but not what the modern day people contemplate as seeing what an actual ice addict is.
Yeah.
I never got sores, you know what I mean? I never got sores. I never sat there scratching and stuff like that. Some days I'd use a point, some days I'd use a couple of grams a day.
Yeah.
And yeah, so, a lot of people, they've got the whole mentality and that, of an ice addict is this sort of person, an ice addict is that sort of person. No, an ice addict can be anyone, you know what I mean? And I think, I remember reading a stat that I think it was 1 in 6 houses, you know what I mean, have had ice smoked in them. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
One in 5 cars. You know what I mean? If they're tested in that, they've had ice smoked in them. You
yeah,
know what I mean? So like for people to think that it's just yeah, they've got a different sense of who actually uses ice, and you know, and yeah, it's difficult too. You know what I mean?
the problem with this drug, why it's different to no other drug, is because of the impact, like if that it has on community, and one can very quickly lose control because it hijacks your frontal lobe of your brain, right? And coupled with the serotonin, anger, and the depression and the paranoia, you're a time bomb waiting to happen, right? And not to mention that it's the synthetic drug that the some of the poison chemicals in it is destroying your organs inside, very slowly eating that away. Where
Yeah,
something we would think would be plant based, like marijuana or heroin, right? Let me tell you that they are lacing marijuana with ice today on the streets to get people coming back for more and
yeah,
addicted.
and look, not just marijuana. Look, I used to know a heroin dealer that was, used to come and buy off me, and he used to mix ice in with his heroin. Even though heroin's very addictive, he
Yeah,
used to put ice in his heroin
yeah,
because that means his heroin was different to any other heroin around the coast, and people would get a different addiction. They'd start using heroin from other dealers and wouldn't get the same effect as they got from him. So
yeah,
they'd go back to him just to
yeah,
get his heroin. You know what
yes,
I mean? So yeah, it's to be honest, I have watched it. I've been around drugs most of my life. You know what I mean? Like, well, I was around drugs most of my life, and look, I watched ice ruin that many of my mates. You know what I mean? Their families, their everything. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
kids. I've watched it. You know what I mean? I've watched them lose their kids. And I think I've had more mates lose their kids to docs, or people I knew to docs and this and that from, being on ice or anything like that, you know what I mean? And ice, yeah, when it gets into a community, and it doesn't matter whether it's, what I mean, like a community on the Gold Coast or whether it's a community up north, you know what
yeah.
I mean? I've watched it. Once it gets into a community, it just takes hold.
Takes over. Statistically, they say for every one person that's addicted to ice, directly affects 9 people within days around
Yeah,
them. Right? And that's the issue. We got rural towns closing down because of this problem. Like it is spreading crazily, and it's destroying lives. We've got 58% of kids taken off families in child safety. 58% of them are because of ice, and
yeah.
you're not getting their kids back. It's destroying people's lives, and our message is really clear, not even once. Don't touch it. It's going to absolutely kill, steal, and destroy your life. What for? You don't need to do that, right? So can't you see the impact on Corey's life, on my life, on everybody's life that comes and shares on the couch? And when I found out that they're cutting ecstasy tablets with ice as well, and party pills, I'm like, oh my goodness, these our kids need to know. They need to know that this drug is not a joke.
It's not, what I mean, it's one of the most addictive drugs, what I mean, that there is out there on the market, what I mean? And the worst thing is, it is that readily available.
Yeah,
What I mean? It's, there's that many people around that are, selling it or doing this or doing that or know someone that can, get it for them.
yeah,
And, that's one of the main things too. Like, I remember, one of the, I think it was when I was about 13 or something like that, before I actually, jumped into full blown addiction and that, was I actually give someone $50 who I'd met. It was a random bloke I met. He was going to get on for me, and I thought we are talking about smoking weed, and he
yeah,
come back with a couple of points of ice. You know what I mean? And straight away, here I am, who I was just, I was smoking numerous amounts of weed. I'm like, oh, like, yeah, well, where can you get me a pipe? As soon as he handed it to me. You know
yeah,
what I mean? So look, that's all it took, and I hadn't used it for a couple of months at that young, at 13. But
yeah,
that's all it took was for someone to put it in my hand and me to go, okay, where can I get something to use it?
yeah. Yeah, that's it. And that's what's happening. You know, they're giving out sample bags of rock to girls in high school, saying you lose 4 kilos in a weekend, and they're changing the colours and stuff because you know you can get people addicted quicker. You can make more money, you can sell more, you can use more, and that's the concept. And it's an entrapment, Corey. I want to hear about what was going on for you when you got caught dealing, and then they were going to lock you up, mate. That must have been horrendous. Like, you know, 8 years to life. Like, what was going on for you here? Like,
Look, I pled guilty, like I was saying, I pled guilty to 1 count of street level trafficking,
yeah,
instead of 3 counts of commercial trafficking because it was me and my ex partner were looking at 8 years to life. And I only pled guilty on the 1 count of street level trafficking if they dropped the charges on her too, which they
yeah,
did, you know what I mean? And then when I went to jail, you know what I mean, I still wasn't sure if they were going to, I spent 11 days in a drug tech, and in a cop station coming off ice, and
wow,
coming off ice, coming off weed, stuck in a drug tank, you know what I mean? And it was horrendous, you know what I mean? I remember laying next to the toilet bowl, and spewing my hole up for days and days on end, you know what I mean? And look, I ended up in jail and it took me months, probably 6 months, you know what I mean, or 4 to 6 months to actually comprehend that at
yeah,
that time I was still looking at, you know what I mean, 8 years plus. And it took me a long time, you know what I mean? And like, I remember I broke up with my ex partner and told her to go live a life that, I wish that she lived, before I met her, you know what I
yeah,
mean? Because she was clean, you know what I mean, when I met her, sort of thing. She'd only used a couple of times,
yeah,
being with me, she turned in within a matter of a couple of days, she was into a full blown addiction. And,
yeah,
I broke up with her and, you know what I mean? Like, I'd say to my family, oh, well, look, I'm in here, I'm looking at, 14 years, 12, because at one stage they come to me and said, oh, well, look, you're going to get 14 years and you're going to serve 12. You know what
wow,
I mean? Like, and, at this stage still, I didn't know exactly what evidence they had against me. You know what
mm,
I mean? And in the end, they had 2 text messages that kept me in jail for a couple of years, and it was 2 text messages, and it was
wow,
someone asking for 2 Oscars, and I turned around and said, "What's an Oscar?" And they said ounces, and then another one, and I said, "Don't know what you're talking about." And then it was another. It was a chick friend who said, "Can I get a quarter on tick? I've just moved into a place. I want to fully furnish it, and I'll pay you back." And so a lot of people think, oh, that you're going to be caught with numerous amounts of drugs, or you've got to be doing this, or you've got to be doing that. No, you know
right,
what I mean? Like, it's, if they know what you're doing, if they know you're dealing, numerous amounts of drugs or dealing on this and that, right? Yeah, you can be held, you know what I mean? And that's all it takes, you know what I mean?
mm,
But look, to be honest, I got that depressed in the first 4 to 6 months of my jail, sentence. And like, if I didn't have my family and my kids that was still supporting me, and even though they knew I'd done the wrong thing, to be honest, I might have taken my own life. You know what I mean? I was that depressed, you know what I mean? But having them in my life and, my mum, ringing my mum every day and my mum reassuring me, going, son, you've got your sons, you've got us, you know what I mean? Even if you're going to do 10 years plus, you've got us to come out to. You know what I mean? That was what kept me strong. You know what I mean? Having just loved ones around me, and even a couple of mates and that, you know what I mean, that were letting my parents know that they were there for me and stuff. And even when I got out and that, you know what I mean? Like, so, yeah, it was very mentally and emotionally, hurting in a way for a long time in my jail, you know what I mean?
yeah.
And
And
I
you were
learned,
sorry, you were still fighting the addiction too because the dopamine, you had no dopamine as well. Plus, you're locked up, and you trying to come to terms, I would imagine, with what has just happened.
well, that's it. When I first got into jail, I started using Subutex or
Yeah,
Suboxone, you know
yeah,
what I mean, to try to, which is readily available in jails itself.
yeah,
And I tried to use that to, like to maybe make myself feel better, you know what I mean, and to, swap one addiction for another or something like that, you know what I mean. And then when I stopped using that, you know, and same deal, like you said, my dopamine levels were, all up and down and this and that. And I actually got into training in jail, into, trying to build muscle and this and that. And, you know, I'm actually very happy with myself for doing that and putting my addiction into a positive addiction.
Good. That's awesome, Corey. Tell me what changed for you. When did you decide that you didn't want to go back to that life?
Look, to be honest, just I sat there one night, you know what I mean, and after I spoke to my boy, one of my sons in jail, and he turned around and said, "Dad, when you get out," he was actually going through a very rough time himself, with me being gone. You know, he barely spoke to his mum, you know what I mean, because his mum was into, you know what I mean, she was into her own thing, you know what I mean, addiction and other stuff, you know what I mean. He was living with my parents, and he turned around and I found out that he was actually on medication for depression at 6 years old. And I turned around and I'm like, I got my mum on the phone. I said, "How's my son got depression at 6 years old, mum?" And she turned around and she goes, "Because, son, look where you are. He misses you." You know, and she put me on the phone to him, and he turned around and he said, "Dad," he said, I said, "What's up, man?" And he goes, "Dad, a doctor's giving me pills to try to make me feel better." And I turned around and I'm like, "Well, man, like," I'm like, and I've always been adamant against that age. You know what I mean? Like, you know, he was 6 years old having to be on depression pills, you know what I mean? And I said, "Why are you on depression? You know, like, why?" And he goes, "Dad, my head just keeps spinning around and around and around." And he goes, "I need you, Dad."
Oh, wow.
And to be honest, that broke my heart. You know what I mean? Like, you know, I went back into myself, you know what I mean? I shed a couple of tears and that, you know what I mean? Like, and I was heartbroken. I was heartbroken, not for anything I'd done, but for what I'd done to my son. You know what I mean? And not being there for my son like I was. You know what I mean? Like, and yeah, for someone, for a 6 year old to turn around and say, "Dad, I need you here when you get out," that was my big turning point. I started my year 9 in jail. I completed my year 9. I completed my year 10 while I was in there, my studies. So when I was out, that I could become a drug and alcohol counsellor for youth. I'm probably halfway through my studies at the moment, which I've had to put on hold with work and stuff like that. And when COVID sort of came, you know, I got out in the middle of COVID. But I actually contacted TAFE the other week, you know, and asking them if I could actually go back and complete my studies. And they've said, "Look, anytime you need to," you know what I mean? And to me, you know what I mean, if I can be a drug and alcohol counsellor for youth, look, I want to mainly work with youth to stop the youth going from down the same path I went. You know what I mean? But, you know, I still get, you know, one or two people every couple of days, mates that I've known for years, send me messages on Facebook and tell me they're struggling. You know what I mean? And like, you know, what can I recommend? What can I help? And not even that. Sometimes they just need an ear to listen to.
Yeah, that's right, mate. Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, at Australian Anti-Ice Campaign, we help people that are in addiction and reaching out for help. And we help them get on a tripod system of support. What that looks like, Corey, is the first thing we help them with is getting them a drug and alcohol counsellor to talk to about unpacking their underlying issues. And then we get them along to group therapy. Yeah. So in AA, so a type of group therapy, and we have a buddy. Yeah, somebody that they can call and say, "Hey, I'm struggling today. I just don't think I want to live." Yeah, you do want to live. It's hard, but you're going to get through this. Come on, let's go out and have a coffee, or, you know, let's go and do a meeting, or, you know, let's walk with you, you know. And this tripod system of support, sometimes people need to go into rehab and detox depending on their situation and their surrounding, because they need to get away from that group. They need to get away from their situation for a bit and have intense therapy, so they have intense counselling and intense. But sometimes on the tripod, that's enough, you know. So we've been able to help so many people, you know, get their life back by that tripod. And sometimes they go into rehab, they come out, and then they do a stint, whether it's 6 months or 12 months or 3 months, you know. But then and they come out, they come and we walk with them, you know.
And look, a lot of people think, oh, they went, like, I get spoke to numerous amounts of people, oh, I tried rehab once. So what? If you tried rehab once and didn't, go back. Go back. You know what I mean? I was saying earlier, I completed my rehab after 7 months, and I stayed on as a graduate volunteer of the rehab. I was running classes, I was helping people, I was counselling people, I was working in the detox at the rehab. Talking to people who come in, and I still slip back into addiction. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And so a lot of people say to me, "Oh, I tried rehab once. It's not for me." If it's not, try again. If it's
Try
not,
again.
try again. And look, if you obviously, they've got to try to find something else in their life as well to, to put that positive thing in. And, we've been wanting to be a drug and alcohol counselor for youth. I don't want to just be a drug and alcohol counselor for youth and, sit in a room and, people have to send their kids me and this and that. I'm looking at starting my personal training course. So, that way, and instead of someone sending their kid to me and me sitting in a room and going, look, mate, don't do this, don't do that, I can take them boxing along the beach. I can take them rock climbing. I can put that negative energy into something positive and give them something to look forward to. You know what I mean? And that's what a lot of people need. You know what I mean? And a lot of people, they, or not a lot of people, a lot of people I've spoke to, if they've done rehab once, they feel like they've let themselves down. They
Yeah.
feel like they've let their family down, and then they're like, "Oh, well, I don't want to go back. I don't want to." It's not how you fall down; it's how you get back up. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's look. I knew one bloke. He done 11 rehabs. You know what I mean? And then he ended up dying. You know what I mean? Due to a drug addiction. You know what I mean? Because he kept saying, "I can't." Rehabs aren't for me. Rehabs aren't. But look, we buried him about 3 years ago. I've had another bloke that he's done 13 rehabs and he's been clean now for nearly 3 years. You know what I mean? And it took him 13 rehabs. You know what I mean? So people that say, look, that, I've tried it once and it's not for me, or I've done this, you've just got to keep it up. You know what I mean? Because to be
You
honest,
you don't lose the fight until you stop, until you
that's
quit. You know?
That's exactly right. And even quitting, like now, like people say to me, "Oh, you're clean now, this and that." I'm still an addict for life. You know what I mean? Like addiction is for life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's what people have got to understand too, because people get compliant. They'll be clean for a year or two and think, "Oh, I've got it this time. I've got it," and then they'll try again or something like that. But
That's
it's not. Addiction is for life. You know what I mean? Like, if you ever been addicted to any sort of drug or alcohol or sex or gambling or anything, you know what I mean? Like, I'm even gambling. You know what I mean? Like, I got out of jail, hadn't gambled for years. I
yeah.
ended up jumping back into gambling. You know what I mean? Like, and started. I was clean. I was everything. I thought, oh well, I need some sort of vice, and that was my excuse to myself. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? That I needed a vice of some sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I ended up, I won 16.5 grand. I probably put most of, half of it, three-quarters of it back into the pokies within a
Yeah.
couple of weeks. You know what I mean? And, that's what people don't understand is addiction, whether it doesn't matter what it is for life. You know what I mean? Like, so,
Yeah,
some people,
that's why we say stay on the tripod. We stay on the tripod system of support. Stay with your counsellor. Stay with your meetings.
yeah,
Keep into good people around you that care about you, because you can never let your guard down. And I've known people that have gone, oh, I'm all right now. I've been good for 7 years, and they start drinking again, and future many drinks lead to a smoke, lead to a pill. Before you know it, they're gone. They're
yeah.
gone. So it's a lifetime maintenance, mate.
That's
Absolutely.
exactly right. And suicide as well with drug abuse. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like I had a mate, it was only 3 weeks ago, that ended up killing himself. And his mum rang me at 1:30 in the morning and said, and she blamed me, and she went off her head and blamed me because, she thought that I was the one that gave him an addiction before I went away. She didn't know that he'd had an addiction for years, you know what I mean? But for
Yeah.
my mate's mother to ring me and say, well, look, years ago when he hung with you and he's never been the same and he's just taken his own life, you know what I mean? To be
Yeah.
honest, you know what I mean? I felt bad, you know what I mean? And I still feel bad that he's taking his own life, but I know that it's not my fault, you know what I
No.
mean? It's not my fault that, that happened, but that's the addiction. You know what I mean? That's drugs' fault. You know what I mean? That he took his own life.
A stronghold. And you know what, I hear too many people suiciding from ice, because the depression's so bad, because it's hard to break free from. And so this is why we want to, like your heart, we want to get to these youth before it's too late, before they stay into there and they lose their life, they lose their family, they lose their futures, their brain, their health, everything. So good on you, mate. I am so stoked that, talking to you today and knowing what you're doing with your life, that we're going to have another helper.
Yeah.
And in your email, you said you want to help the anti-ice campaign, and I'm like, sweet, man. I'm just like stoked that for your heart, because we have the same heart. We know what it's like to live in hell, mate. And don't wish that for your son. I don't wish that for my grandson, my kids, and and everyone else's kid out there.
That's exactly right. You know what I mean? And look, there's not enough schools at the moment that are supporting this. I know there's a lot of schools. Every school there is needs to jump on board and have the AAIC come to them, come speak to them. You know what I mean? They need every youth around. You know what I mean? Need someone. You know what I mean? That's been in addiction to say, look, I was there. You know what I mean? Don't touch it. You know what I mean? Like, there's so much better things out there in life. You know what I mean? And that's the thing. We were saying earlier, I had a perfect upbringing, so it's not just not just people that had hard upbringings and this and that jump into drug addiction and everything. It can be anyone from any walk of life.
That's right, Corey. And yeah, absolutely. So, if we're speaking to you today, I don't know if this message is touching you and you're hearing Corey's passion, because he's been there. He's been entrapped for a very long time, and it tried to kill him and destroy, and it's killed a lot of his friends. So if we're speaking to you today, I don't know if you're a family member of a loved one that's entrapped in addiction and you're not sure who to talk to, who to reach out. Guys, we have lived experienced people who are now counsellors that can help put light onto that situation and give you the tools to be able to help your loved one. Or if you might be that person today that you might be going, I've done rehab 5 times, but I do want to break this cycle. I do want to change my life, but I just don't know how. We're talking to you today. We've been able to come out of that world. We want to help you. People like Corey, like myself, all our other buddies, we're here to support you and to show you the way, what helped us and what can help you, to give you the tools to stand with you, mate, and go, yes, you can do this. You haven't failed until you quit. Yeah, get up again. Let's go again.
That's it.
Everyone's worth it. Yeah.
And they just need that person to have, to listen to them. You know what I mean? If that person, even if that person isn't ready to quit yet, and they need someone to talk to, find someone. You know what I mean? My name's up here. People can find me on Facebook. You know what I mean? Feel free to send me a message. You know what I mean? If they need someone to talk to. You know what I mean? And if I can, and if I will jump on and I will talk. You know what I mean? So a lot of people just need that person to say, look, I'm here. Talk to me if you need it.
That's awesome, Corey. Thank you so much for your heart. And thank you for sharing your story. It's so important for people to understand everything that you've talked about today. And addiction is a lifelong, you're in a lifelong recovery. You do have to put a framework. We can show you how. So if you are that person and you need some help, the number to call is 0481 844 555. Yeah, or you can reach out to us and just chat online. We're always here. Corey's going to be online. We're going to tap him into this post. And, if you have questions for Corey, please ask. We can't wait, Corey, to have you part of our team and have you a registered buddy, because every day we're getting more and more people reaching out for help, and we need more buddies. So we need more people that can support other people that have lived it, so we can't wait. I'm stoked to meet you, and thank you so much for your heart to share. I look forward to working with you, Corey.
You too. Thank you very much.
All right, well, guys, we're going to have to wrap up the show. If you have any questions, please ask them. Corey will remain online. We'll tap him in. And remember, not even once is our message. Stay safe, stay clean, and God bless. Love you lots. Speak to you soon, Corey.